keeps it better in touch. And that was my thought process on it. And I understand you would prefer to come to us, but I think it's problematic at times to do it that way because of the way state law is set up and because of the way the appeal process and stuff goes. But I understand your point of view, yes.
General, after coming here today, do you think by us discussing the rural board makeup that will give some protection to the rural citizens in regards to their wants and needs, and would be more amicable to that solution just to move this forward of what we have on the current books to assign that come January and get this ball rolling, because it sounds like that's kind of the plan of action that needs to happen to present to us the zoning. But I want the citizen subcommittee to understand that we hear the wants and needs, but it almost sounds like this is the route that we have to take to listen to your wants and needs. Because if not, I see some people shaking their head. I guess I'll ask that to our attorney. What if we don't set up that rural board? Then what happens come January 1st?
With regard to what?
If we don't set up if we don't set up a rural planning commission,
Mm-hmm.
and we do nothing come January the 1st,
There is an ordinance on the books that controls the use of land within the 5 miles.
and
That ordinance is still legal and still valid.
is that the UDC?
That is the UDC.
Okay. That being said, knowing the makeup of this 12-body commission, if we were to try to repeal the UDC or do away with it, I'm not sure if that would pass, and I think you guys in the audience could agree with that. But let's say we do. If we have the vote to repeal the UDC, then what happens in the outside of city Shreveport limits?
There is no land use
Okay.
control. So it would be essentially you do what you want to and hope that the other items that General Graves mentioned are sufficient.
And I see some head shaking no on that now. Is that because that's not what you guys want, or is that? I'd like if the committee would be okay, Mr. Kratman. This is democracy. If you would, General, would you allow Mr.
Y'all
Kratman?
entertain me. I'd like
Absolutely.
Glad to
Yeah,
you,
please.
Mr. Crackman.
So, and I know me and Henry had a little debate about this and the zoning, and you said rose of another color is what you said.
Okay.
Um,
I wasn't sure which term
Well-
I used, but yeah.
we get the point.
Yeah, yeah.
What I'm looking at is something along the lines of property standards. If you look at chapter 30 of the Caddo Code of Ordinances, I believe it's right, and I believe it starts with nuisance, and it has an actual physical description of junk in it. And so if we did away with the UDC and we did away with the 2030 master plan, then you still have that to be reliant upon. And considering that it's my belief that it would have to encompass the entire parish, just the same as it was y'all's belief whenever y'all enacted this board of Todd's. And a matter of fact, I still have Dr. Wilson's recommendation here. But it would have to be parish-wide. And the separation of industrial, residential, and, well, we already pretty well explained industrial, but a separation could be by ordinance much the same as property standards. Whereas you can't say in this area you can do this, that, whatever. You can say you cannot have a industrial plant within X amount of miles away from a residence, or something like that, that is more of a blanket ordinance rather than a zone or a district. Because he is right, if you do a zone or a district, you do have to have a board. You have to have an appointed board. Whereas if you rule by ordinance, much like property standards, or specifically property standards, you guys are the board, or the full body is the board, not you all, but all 12 is who oversees property standards. And yes, to argue with the full body, you would have to go to court, unfortunately. But that does hold the whole commission accountable, and that does give public input on whatever ordinances you may or may not want to add to what is on the books. And I'm not talking about Chapter 54 that was disregarded. I'm talking about Chapter 30, nuisances, property standards, more or less, is what they're called, which I disagree with a great deal, but whenever it comes to property standards, I'm incredibly libertarian. I just assume buy my neighbor out if I don't like what they're doing or move. But in respect to all the emails that we had, and we had 608 emails of their opinion. 604 of them said the Caddo Commission can stick it. 4 of them said we would like rules with reason. So I'm walking that line and saying that you could rule by ordinance, not planning, not zoning. And if you did it along the lines of property standards, where junk is already defined, and you can add whatever stringent you want to, and if the public thinks it's too stringent, then we'll fill this room up. And if you still pass it, we vote you out. I mean, it's democracy at its finest, in my opinion. But to say that we have to have an appointed board is incorrect. That's only if you do zoning. That's only if you do districts. That's not necessary in our case. And it's been successful all over the country.
Attorney Bernstein, is that ring truth?
I'm not sure if I agree with everything that Mr. Crackman says. For instance, and likewise, I agree with you, because of property standards, the rationale behind property, if you disagree with the zoning ordinance, you disagree with property standards, because they both are telling you what you can do with your property. With regard to, and I guess I keep coming back to, and I need to get more details about it, but one of the things that I know that happened in rural Bossier Parish was somebody built a very nice retirement home in a wooded area, and shortly after he moved in, somebody bought the property nearby and put in an oil field parking lot. That isn't what he was anticipating having as a neighbor. That oil field property lot, I don't know how you would exclude that under property standards. It's appropriately paved, it's appropriately lighted, it's appropriately fenced. I don't know how you rule that out as a property, under property standards, under a nuisance. And in terms of the idea of saying that you could not have an industrial site within a certain distance of a residence, I'd have to look at that.
Do you think you could work on something like that and prepare it to us to where we would have a vote? Because I'm curious of the makeup of our commission to see if we actually had a resolution that came before us that we physically had to vote on, that you guys watched us vote on, that stated repeal UDC and master plan and enact Chapter 30. And if we would end up getting 7 yeses around this horseshoe, I think that would be interesting to see if that would happen. That would be a roadmap to you guys when it comes to how you're going to start campaigning and changing people out, if that is your intent.
Well, I'll tell you what would be, if everything that I'm saying is correct, and I've done a lot of reading on this, and I've even consulted attorneys other than Frazier and Bernstein. But if you look at our last meeting, we had a representative of the DEQ, EPA show up and explain the industrial and how it can be separated and so forth. I'm not going to bore y'all with that because I don't even remember all of it. But what would be really interesting about what I'm saying, in the event that y'all find it to be true, and it is true, is you're starting from the ground up. And that's essentially what we would like, is you start with the basics of property standards. You're talking about junk cars and grass height. Now, if you want to add more to it and say that, you know, a 500 square foot parking lot doesn't need to be next door to a nursing home, period. Well, you have the opportunity to start with a blank piece of paper and write that down. And then you tell us, and all of us idiots that have nothing else better to do, that are watching, we go, oh, light bulb, I wanted to build a parking lot. Let me rally my people and get up there and holler and scream and kick about it. But for the most part, there's already stuff on the books to build on. You already have a skeleton that was overridden by the UDC, so a lot of people even forget that it exists. I mean, Chapter 30, whenever I read it just a couple of months ago, and I've read it several times since, I didn't realize how much was already on the books. And when I say already on the books, I don't mean something that has to be reenacted. I mean something that's on the doggone books. If the UDC went away, you have junk ordinances, you have noise ordinances, you have all sorts of things. I was just looking at while I was sitting there, and it's pretty interesting, and I think it would behoove all of you to look at it and realize that there is a lot of stuff in place for a lot of the more common things that we talk about. Pig farms, creosote plants, power plants, gas stations, you know, things like that. There's a lot of stuff that's already in place. There really is, without a new bureaucracy.
Commissioner Young, I have you on the board.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, to ask the parish attorney to draft a resolution that comports with this committee report.
Second.
Sorry, the resolution to do what, sir?
So I would like, so now I can speak about it.
Sure,
correct?
sure.
So I would like for you, if, you know, to do your very best to write a resolution that meets the need, that meets the requests of this committee report, to repeal the UDC and to repeal the master plan of 2030 and to state that we will do our best, at least, to govern by
Chapter
property
30.
standards ordinances under Chapter 30.
So that would be an ordinance, that would be correct, so.
Sure, you could write it as, you could, if it's an ordinance, that's fine too. Yes,
Yeah,
an ordinance.
because what you're doing is you're repealing
Right,
an
it would be-
ordinance, so
yes,
it
that
would be an
the repeal.
ordinance. Yeah.
And then, you know, it just occurs to me that the Chapter 30 issues, you know, we might need to know more about the case law as to whether judges ever distinguish regulation of a condition of a property as zoning, and whether we could regulate uses by regulating conditions of property standards. I don't know if that's possible or not, but it would be good to know if this has arisen in Louisiana before in front of a judge, or if perhaps it's arisen in Texas or another state like that.
Well, I would note, Texas is an interesting case. Houston is one of, I think, 2 or 3 municipalities that have that, and it is only the city of Houston. It is
Right.
not Harris County.
Right.
Actually, Texas has a lot of zoning.
Right. So we would be sort of like the converse of Houston. We would be a
Correct.
heavily zoned city and a not heavily zoned parish.
Yeah,
I
I think when we think of zoning, we're thinking of River Oaks and areas like that in Houston. I'm not sure that that's true throughout Houston, that the resulting land use is that desirable.
I haven't spent much
you know,
time there.
But anyway, that's just an observation.
I understand. I have not spent much time there, but I do want to, you know, do our best to honor the work and the opinions of the citizens we put on this board. And if it doesn't pass, we'll find out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. That's, and to the board, I hope that's very amenable. It sounds like if we move this forward, and we'll only have one other committee member, but I know he speaks for the rule, but I'll let him speak in a minute. But the best we can do is pass this out of committee, have Attorney Bernstein draft this over the next few weeks. I hope he didn't have big plans for Christmas, Attorney Bernstein. and then bring this back to us, and then you, the citizens, will see how the board of its entirety of 12 make up the vote in that scenario, and then we'll go from there. Obviously, we have the other board appointment that's coming in January, but we have two different decisions that will be coming down the pipe, and that is our job, is to hear the voices of the people, draft ordinances, and act on them. Commissioner Hopkins?
Well, I just wanted to point out on the property standards, because that's something that we deal with quite a bit, is that most of our property standard stuff is for residential, and it doesn't address commercial. So we would probably need to go back in and look at our property standards
Yeah.
also if we did something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we can move this forward. This process is not gonna be done
Right.
probably till February, the end of
That's correct.
February, because I think if we do an ordinance that's related to this, it's a couple readings, isn't it?
Yeah.
So so we're still so everybody understands, we
Right.
start the first year,
Right.
we're still under the UDC rules. Now, NPC won't really be that involved because they're gonna be busy inside Shreveport, but we still have to take applications.
Yes,
If a
so
business
have
wants to
everything.
come in and do something, they've got to have an application place to bring it to.
Right.
Right now,
That's right.
it's the NPC. Now, if we decide to do something else, then we can do that. But
Yeah.
That's correct.
we've still got one place working over here and another place working over there. And it's at some point it'll come together, but everybody just hold on. It's taking us this long. It's not gonna take us a little longer.
Yeah. Yeah, Commissioner Chavez, Commissioner Hopkins is actually right.
Yes.
Until you all give us something that we can enforce, we have to do what the current ordinances say we need to do. Let's be aware of that.
No, that's great info, and I'm
Yes, sir.
glad it's coming before everybody right now, and this is televised. So, starting January 1st, we will still be taking applications, and
Yes,
we're
sir.
still paying Director Allen
No,
and the
sir.
MPC, and they're
Let me-
managing that.
Let me correct you.
Yes.
Starting January 1st, there is no place for a citizen to turn in an application.
So that being said, while you're drafting this resolution, or this ordinance for Commissioner Young, do we need to draft something that gives us a
But-
30-day or a 6-day window that we contract with the MPC? Because we still have citizens that we're responsible for.
Yeah, and Ms. Bryant is reminding me, we are working on a solution to that problem now.
Okay.
So it's not that we're not, it's just that, you know, once again, as Commissioner Hopkins has said, you know, we've got some things we have to do.
Okay, so that being said, if a citizen does come down here, turn an application, and then they get phone calls from the MPC, as the MPC's supposed to do their job, I don't want citizens getting upset saying, oh, I thought we got the MPC out of our business. Well, we still need the MPC right now, so.
Unless we set something else up.
Yeah.
Well, and once again, be real clear, staff versus board.
Right.
Does,
Go ahead.
Attorney Bernstein, when Ms. Bryant just spoke to you to say that we had something in the works regarding that, do you need anything from us, like a resolution to get that going, or is it purely administrative? Great. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
We do have a budget item, though, that we voted on for the MPC for 2022.
Yes, sir. We had to.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
This,
Right,
Yes,
that,
we have the resources to pay for the web services that we are going to get.
okay.
We couldn't just not do anything. In response to those citizens, we'll bring in something to deal with zoning or whatever.
And then lastly, for the citizens that did serve on that committee, like Commissioner Hopkins said, we will still have citizens turning in applications for zoning requests. We still need those applications for that rural board. So, and I would love to see some names from this committee sitting on that board if ultimately that's what happens. Because remember, we have 12 people and only about 3 or 4 of them really live out in the parish. So we're going to be at the mercy of the majority of the vote. So if it does come down to the rural board picking the planning body, then I would like to see some of you guys that have been going to these countless hour meetings and giving us the opinion of the rural parish. Other than that, any more commissioners, everything to add?
no, this will be the hardest thing we do.
Right. Well, and we're doing it right, and we assembled a good team. All right, General Graves, thank you for the report. Thank you for coming down. I know you were set to come later today, but we'll take this report. We'll scratch it off the agenda for later. I know you have some dental issues, and then when we talk in January, we'll go from there. And hopefully, with Attorney Bernstein has drafted on this ordinance coming down, we can meet with you guys and see what you guys consider on it.
Well, if I may, Chairman, I am available to come.
Okay.
But the main point that I would want to make, and if I can give that to you gentlemen and have you carry the mail on it, is what this is not about. That it has nothing to do with the placement of oil wells, with fracking operations, or tanker trucks. All of those concerns, which I share, are preempted by the state.
In the military, I learned, just like you did, a short pencil is better than a long memory. So I got the neighborhood covenants, they stay in place, and the oil and tanker trucks are part of the DEQ. And I think the last note I have is to appease Commissioner Young, Attorney Bernstein, you probably have to work on a junkyard ordinance within the Chapter 30 Code of Ordinances, because if that's the way we go, then we're going to need some saving grace for the junkyards near the farms.
Well, with that note, sir, I will excuse myself this afternoon then. Thank you.
Thank you, General.
All right.
General.
All right. We adjourn.